Mary, I'm so glad you can be here. And then, do you like to be called W.E.?
Yes, I like W.E.
I think a lot of people call you Willie, but
yeah.
I've known you both for so many years, and such dear friends. I'm so glad you could come and be part of this program that we're doing, this project. And I'll be prompting you every now and again, but I want you two to do most of the talking, to go back to the times that are portrayed on the painting, Lord, Plant My Feet on Higher Ground. And so Mary, could you start off and talk a little bit about your actions and how you were involved in the civil rights movement at that time?
Dr. King was here in 1963 at E.C. Glass High School, and he talked, of course, about what we had to do in order to make this change, and what we needed to do to help him work at making the change. And it struck me so until I decided that I needed to be out there helping out too. And so from that moment that I heard him at E.C. Glass in 1963, I was out in the street trying to do whatever I could to make the change come about. And one of the things I loved that I did most of all was I started a girls' club in the Darrington Housing Project. And the girls had a softball team. We did spelling bees, which, you know, today nobody even cares about, but it was a training for them to help them be more active in their studies at school. And then they also got training in how to run a meeting, because they were concerned about what was happening, but they didn't know how to carry themselves in order to be productive about what they were doing and saying, and learning how not to, first one then the other jumping up screaming, but being able to listen to other folk and then make comments that would be helpful to it. So I'm very proud of that organization. In fact, I had one of the young ladies come to me about 6 months after we started and say that she had been elected as president at school of a club, and she said it had not been for us having that girls club, she'd never known what to do or how to do it. So I'm always proud of that. And then the next thing I got involved with was the community action program. We needed to have a program like that here in Lynchburg desperately. So I worked with other people, Dr. Jackson, Essie Gordon, Virginia Hughes, Haywood Robinson. There are some of the people, Francis Carmore, that worked with me in that group so that we could get that off the ground. And of course we were very fortunate. Now we had some white people involved also. It was one of the lawyers, his last name was Baker, I can't remember his first name now, but he also was helping us. And
Raymond Baker. I think his name was Raymond Baker.
Yeah, that sound Ray Baker sounds exactly right. And so we worked, and we were very fortunate. We did get the program here in Lynchburg. And it started off with having summer programs for young people, so that young kids who had just played all the summer, had no money, were able to work in that program. It was a youth program, and the city participated with us tremendously well. And young people were able to have a little change. They had a little money to go back to school. And then, of course, the food stamp program, we never, actually, I don't think we heard very much of it in Lynchburg. We might have heard it on the news or something, but we didn't know much about it. But one of the ladies that worked in the program had heard, she went to visit her relatives in Philadelphia. When she come back, she told us about it. We went to work and got that into Lynchburg, so that you know, now the food stamp program is a big program. You know, back in those days it was pretty small, but at least it was helpful to people who needed it. There also was active community action, I'm still talking about, was active about getting housing and repairing housing and just helping people in every way they could, helping them find jobs, training them so that they could apply for jobs. And so I really feel good about having been part of an organization like that. It's been very...
You helped it start up, but you also served on the board for many years.
Oh yeah, yeah. I served on the board of the directors. I don't know how long I was there, but I was secretary for a while. And then, of course, the Head Start, which I feel has been a tremendous program. Now, you know that a lot of folk are not given Head Start the credit that it deserves. But I will tell you this. I went to E.C. Glass's recent graduation for 2010. They had 328 graduates. And I am almost positive, without asking anyone, that we had like 48% of that class as black students. And the highest grade point was a young black fellow. So Head Start is happening. It has taken a long time, just like anything takes a long time, but Head Start is working. So,
and there was some resistance in the beginning.
Right.
A lot of resistance.
Yes.
Because I remember that Lynchburg did not like to accept federal funds for a lot of things.
No, no.
So it wasn't easy getting the food stamps and the Lynchburg Community Action Group started. Right. So I really want to commend you for that work.
Well, you know, just along with others, I did the best I could. It was, I had not been for all those pulling together. And that was the real magic of it, because I can't remember all the white persons that were on that group, but had not we been able to work with one another, I don't think we'd ever gotten it off the ground. Dr. Divine. Yeah.
Molly McLennan? Was Molly McLennan involved?
I can't remember.
Maybe not right in the beginning, but I know she was.
Later on, yeah. And so that little first group of persons, and we were kind of trying to be equal, black and white at that time. And we all worked with one another to get this thing off, because they knew that we needed something here too. So, you know, I was just a part of it, and I'm just happy that I was. I was happy that I was. Then, of course, at that time I was active in the NAACP. We had 50 young people in my group, and I went with them to King Dominion, which some of those kids had never heard of going someplace to a amusement park. So we went there, and then we visited people's farms. I would take them to movies, and we even went to Roanoke to, I'm not sure it was Michael Jackson, but I took them to the concert, something they'd never done, and it was a wonderful group, and right now, over half of those children are college graduates, where they might have dropped off and not gone to school, but we had talks, and I encouraged them that they had to go to school, and in order to make a better income, they had to go to college. And I'm just so proud of them, because they really did well. They have done well in their lives, and I hear from them. They come by to see me, and it's something I'm very proud of. And then, like the senior NAACP, we were the first ones to have a annual banquet. We started the banquet right here in Lynchburg, And also we had a state convention here, which had not been done in years and years and years, if at all. So it was fun. And the thing that I liked about it most was that the average woman is not going to go into the pool room. She's not going to go into a bar. I went in those pool rooms and in those bars and asked the people to join the NAACP and support it. So, you know, I just had a good time being out there. It was rough. It was rough. We had a hard time. But at the same time, it has made my life fuller. So,
when you say it was rough, how do you mean? It was just hard physically, or just did you get negative feedback? Or?
the negative feedback was what could have killed you if you didn't have a strong personality, you know? And we had some strong people working in there, so it was at times when the persons wouldn't allow us to use this or give up a permit for this, you know, these kind of things. Things that would kind of depress your you wanna your eagerness to do things would be cut off because of the negativism, and it wasn't just whites that did this either. So you know, we were getting it from both sides of the fence. Mm-hmm. Some people were comfortable in their positions in the black community, and doing these things were threatening their positions, and so they, you know, they were against us. But we overcame it because we stood together. And then lastly, I'm gonna let Mr. Clark go, son.
Oh, he's got plenty of time. Oh, keep going.
We couldn't get anyone on city council, so what we did was start our own city council. We had a black city council in Lynchburg where the citizens of Lynchburg elected themselves. So that was very helpful.
I've never heard of that before.
Really?
Tell us more about that. Who organized that? NAACP organized that?
Well, it's 9 times out of 10 it was basically that because the people who were working on it were NAACP people. Mm-hmm. So Garnell Stamps, Dr. Jackson, Hayward Robinson, Mr. Thornhill, always Mr. Thornhill. Mm-hmm. Whatever I'm talking to you about, if I don't call his name, believe me, he was always right there. Mangum was there at the time we did that.
Oliver Faxon.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Mr. Clark, come on in.
Yeah, Oliver Faxon.
Yes.
And Mr. and Mrs. Berry played a part. Nanny Winston played a part. There were quite a few people playing a part. She mentioned something about everything was not the Caucasian or the white folk against us. For survival, there were a number of blacks who called themselves surviving. And it was a necessity there. Mm-hmm. And so some of those things that happened, we didn't basically understand it. But the beautiful part about it was there were so many of those persons doing things undercover to pretend and let you know that we're not a part of it, but we're feeding that area. And I'm really interested in something that used to happen. So many people were against one of our businessmen, Bill Gordon. Right. But Bill Gordon had meetings that they didn't know anything about because, you know, he got on the school board. And they thought that they had him captured on the other side, but he was under there. And quite a few other names were under the surface. We also came up
double
with,
agents in a way.
Well, that's right. Now, I'm an active participant in the NAACP. However, we had the Lynchburg Improvement Association, which was out there. It didn't appear to be the NAACP, but they were working together. We got SNCC and the SCLC came in here. They were working together. Martin Luther King's work was not basically under what we call the NAACP, but actually we had all of these spin-off organizations in order to make approach dealing with different things.
Could you talk a bit more about the Lynchburg Improvement Association? Who were members of that? Do you remember?
No, I'd mess it up.
Oh, because I thought Jackson.
Jackson was a member of it, yes. Even Thornhill was a member of it also. Mm-hmm. And we had some Caucasians that were in there, mm-hmm. whose names were not brought up, but they were feeding and working with a number of things. And I don't have too much about exactly who was there because a lot of it was kept under. Mm-hmm. And when we got ready for the application to apply to EC Glass from the high school, that was really one little shady area. I had a number of those pupils in my class. Usually the pupils that were applying for the integrated schools were taking the academic course. I was teaching an academic subject, mm-hmm. and we had an awful lot of work to do. This is where we had to really check and work with our students, and we had a lot of stringent rules and regulations. And one of the areas that put Mr. Stamps, or Garnell Stamps, active in this, you see, he was one of my pupils also. But what happened was, he came back and he started teaching. And it so happened, we had what we call a detention. We had people who just didn't follow the rule. They had to go back into detention. But even in the detention, we taught certain things and taught certain habits. It so happens that we couldn't have our pupils standing up getting themselves into trouble, even though they were working with the needs of the community. We had some of our teachers who you thought they were on the other side. And some were because they were afraid. Mm-hmm. Now, we had a whole lot of things that stopped people from doing. And I still have a notebook at home when Leroy Cofield got in an altercation with a reporter. And oh, it was blown out of proportion. And everybody thought that Mr. C was on the other side. He went to the bat with Cofield and really worked. Carl Penn really worked. You didn't see them marching, but they stood up and carried the banner. This is what was important to us. And some of us who didn't follow the line, we kind of got ourselves in trouble. Got ourselves in trouble with each other. And just like I was telling you about the project I'm talking about, how do you see the problem as compared to how another sees the problem? Mm-hmm. And this is where it came from. We had a number of people to lose their business license. That was where
the fear came in, when you were talking. Mm-hmm. Could you talk a little more about that incident with Cofield? Because didn't the newspaper then do something?
Yes. Well, it so happened that something came up on the field. Some argument came up into the school system. And as it came up, there was a little fight going on, and that was from racial discrimination. And the newspaper, which was against us during that time.
Against all blacks.
All blacks, that's right.
A very racist newspaper.
That's right. We had decided for one time to boycott the newspaper. It was found by the group that Mary was working with that you can boycott the newspaper, but we need copies of it in certain areas so we would know what was going on. Well, when they sent a reporter up to take pictures of what was taking place with the problem.
The fight.
The fight. And to stop the photographing, Cofield jumped at the reporter and told him, no, you don't do this. Cofield and Carl Penn were out there that day. And when the reporter insisted, you see, we had this thing is, if you're black, you get back. You don't ask questions. And that superior attitude was within that reporter. Cofield couldn't stand it. And Cofield jumped up physically. He was teaching physical education, and the altercation came about. And there, the police came in, who really had very little, if any, sympathy for the cause that we were fighting. So Cofield was dead in trouble. And the administration, CWC, Bill Gordon, and so many others got together and said, you're not going to mistreat this young man, not on this. And that's how that thing cleared up. I even kept a folder of it, and I think I have a folder of it right now.
But then the newspaper would not publish anything to do with Dunbar
Nothing
for a long period of time.
That's right. They did not publish anything except if they could find something negative. Nothing positive. And we had a difficult time with the newspaper until finally Mangum came down to set up a paper. And when we set up that black paper, that started really starting things to roll. And they started covering some things in order to be halfway competitive. And that was where I really got started in writing for the paper. And we had a beautiful time. But we still didn't get what we wanted. We got close to what we wanted. But I'm afraid right now we are losing that which was gained. And, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll go into that toward the end of the discussion. So I'd like to go back now, Mary, to what you were starting up Lynchburg Community Action Group, and that got started. What happened? Like, you were working then at Craddock and Terry, right? You also had a family. You had children, and so you were a busy woman. Anyway, would you like to tell us a little bit about your job at Craddock and Terry?
Okay, I was working, Craddock Terry had just recently become integrated for work with black and whites were there, and it was a shoe factory, and I got hired at Craddock Terry as a shoe flap worker is what it was called. And I had been working there, I think, about a year when the white girls came to me and they said, we don't think they treat us fair, so we want to start a union. Would you help us? Would you talk to people in your department? And I said, well, sure. I'll talk to them if it's going to help us get better working conditions and more money, sure. So they had a meeting, and I went to the meeting, and they told us all about what might happen, what to go through, and I just stood up and said, now you got to understand these old people in here can't put their jobs on the line. If we're going to do something, then the young people in here are the ones who are going to have to do it, because we don't want to see them lose their jobs. The very next day, the superintendent came to me and said, I hear you quite a speaker. I said, oh yeah? When did you hear that? He said, yeah, they told us that you were speaking there. I said, I don't know nothing about it, man. I just said what was needed to be said, and that's it. But anyway, I lost my job. Suddenly, I could not do the work right. Before that night, I was the best worker in my department. But after that, I couldn't do anything right. So, you know, naturally they call themselves trying to give you a couple of times to make up for what you're doing. So after the second time that they said I hadn't done it properly, I lost my job. And of course, I had already wrote to the EEOC and told them that I had spoke up in the meeting and that they had approached me about it. So I wrote to them right away. I went straight to Mr. Thornhill's office, and he helped me. He and Mr. I call him Crackhurst, but that's not his real name. they helped me get a letter together and sent it right off. And of course, EEOC sent someone in here right away and started investigating, and they found out that they really had mistreated me, and it was all because of speaking up at that meeting. And I had 3 children, and they were all in school, and so I went to Community Action, and Hayward gave me a job. So I wasn't without a job more than a couple weeks. And while I was working, someone told me about the nursing program at Lynchburg General Hospital. So I went there and took the exam, and of course I passed the exam, and I guess I had been out of work, you know, away from Craddock maybe 3-4 months, and then I went into the nursing program. And then of course, once I got into the nursing program, it wasn't any pressure put on me from the hospital. I just didn't have time to continue to do all the things I had been doing before I got that job. And of course, being a divorced parent, it took a lot out of me to just take care of the children, you know. And now I continued my activities. I didn't stop completely, but I wasn't quite as active as I had been in the past. And it wasn't because I was scared of the job, because nobody at work ever said anything to me about my activities. And of course they knew. They knew who I was, and they knew, you know.
Before they hired you.
But nobody ever said anything to me. In fact, they were very good to me at Lynchburg General Hospital. They really were.
Now what year was that?
This was 1969.
1969. Because I don't think General Hospital had integrated its staff too much before that.
No, they didn't. They had integrated it before I got there, but it wasn't more than, say, 2 years. And it was still very few. It wasn't like, in my class, it was 10 people in my nursing class, and it was only 3 of us black. So you see, they kept it so the ratio would never be out of whack of what they wanted. But I have to say, from the administration on down to the very cleaning department, they were all very nice to me. So I have nothing but praise for Lynchburg General. Now, they didn't do everything right, but then so did a whole lot of other places. But at least they had black nurses when I got there. And
were the black doctors allowed to practice at that time? Because at one time they were not.
No. They cannot come in there, do any surgery, or like delivering in the maternity department. They couldn't do that either. So no, Dr. Johnson came over a couple of times. He could come in and talk to his patients, but he, you know,
he could not practice.
No.
So that didn't come until later.
That's right.
Now, I had heard some things that they kept, blood supplies separate for white people and black people at one time.
Yes.
Was that the same when you were there?
No, they were not in the same room when I was there, but they were on the same hall. You know, they were on the same hall, but now see, like when I delivered my children, it was segregated. It was no white people on my ward, no white people. So Lynchburg General by 1956 had, at least you could go down, you know, be on the same ward they were on, but never in the same room. All of that came later.
And usually, you know, it took a struggle. Now, you were saying you were in Deerington. Did you live in? You lived in Deerington.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much all black, right?
Yes, it was all black.
No, pretty much it was all black.
It was all black, and that was what they call the projects. And that's where I would come, and I get to know some of the people there, Bertha Dickerson particularly, who was such a great worker with Lynchburg at that time. And I think she worked with that same group of girls that you started up.
She did. See, Dump was The city dump was, I would, let's say about 2.5 blocks from the projects. So now all day long you got all that stench, you got snakes, you got everything. So the people in the projects, we felt like that we just didn't want that. We couldn't deal with it no more. So Bertha Dickinson was very much instrumental in us forming a group to go to city council and ask them to take it away from there. Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought that took a lot of courage, because I remember, and these were women, mostly single parents, poor, a lot of them, you know, on welfare, or to get the courage to organize and, you know, go against the powerful city government.
Right.
And you won.
And you know, the people who lived in the project at that time was different than they are today. They really were. They were people who loved their children and were concerned about them. And you know, the greater majority of those people who started in the project moved out into their own homes. Mm-hmm. Their children have finished college. It was totally different in what it is today, but even Darrington, after all that time, is still not as bad as some other projects. You don't get all that bad feedback from Darrington project that you do from a lot of them. But in the beginning, it was a place that they had, the manager would go around every morning and he walked that project, and if he saw one scrap of paper near your apartment, he knocked on the door and you had to come and pick it up. So he kept it up, you know. He kept it so that it was a place you didn't mind living.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember how creative the children were.
Yeah,
I was just thrilled with them.
They enjoyed you tremendously.
Your daughter Jeannie was a real gem. I used to enjoy that. Well, I didn't mean to leave you out.
You haven't left me out. I'm still involved.
But I know Mary has to leave at 1, so you know, you have plenty of time after that.
Well, I'm taking.
No,
she's driving with me. I'll tell you the truth. I'm definitely involved because it's bringing back so many things that happened, and the reason for some of these things happening, and it deals with the changes that we see today as compared. She brought up the last point about how we call it the projects, the type of people as we call it, well, the characteristics of the people. I don't want to say the type of people, the characteristics, and what caused these changes. This is what we're looking at today.
And what do you think? Why do you think that was caused that?
I think a lot of time we've taken for granted so much. One of my projects right now is on whose shoulders we stand. I put that on my card that I'm using, my card. And we are dealing with whose shoulders we stand. And a lot of those people are standing on your shoulders and my shoulders. And I'm dealing with it at UVL over here. There is a difference. And we've got to bring that balance back. Right now, we don't have any black lawyers, really. We were in trouble. And I notice right now, we have a trend where law enforcement is finding a whole lot within their ranks that's not right. It was there before, but it's really coming out now, and some of these people are really having trouble.
In what way do you mean trouble in their ranks?
Trouble in their ranks. People are profiteering over the crime that is going on. Oh. Some people are arresting somebody and they're involved in the same thing. And it's coming out right now. And I'm dealing with our young people who are felons today. From not violent crime, but other crimes. And they were sometimes just petty mistakes. But the book was thrown after them racially. And we are having some problems with that. working with the State Crime Commission, we've had nothing but a go along. And as one of our state representatives made a statement in December while I was with the Crime Commission, says, that will not come out of my committee. I'll not call his name, however, but it was racial. And we're still fighting the same old fight right now. And I'm having trouble with a whole lot of people that she's basically talking about. They are having trouble because of stigma from the past.
Mm-hmm.
And we're having a lot of it, so, but we can't cover all of that today.
No, but I think we can touch on some of those things,
Mm-hmm.
because we had talked about, you know, how the NAACP and the Voters League were so involved with voter registration, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And people did turn out, you know, they registered, because it wasn't too long ago they had the poll tax here, so blacks could not vote.
Right.
I mean, were disenfranchised.
Mm-hmm.
And until we had the modified ward system established here, even though it was 30% black here in Lynchburg, you could very rarely get a group together to elect anybody that would really represent you. Well, after a lot of hard work, for people like you and others, we have gotten, you know, a representative elected. But now people are not turning out to vote after all that hard work, and that must be a disappointment.
It's quite a disappointment. And you just remind me when you start talking about it. I wish I had a record or a tape of me trying to register in Lynchburg to become a voting citizen in Lynchburg, and the questions that were asked.
So this was during the time when you had to pay a poll tax?
Oh yes, just after the poll tax thing.
Now, do you remember any of those questions
No.
at all?
They were pure academic history.
And then only blacks had to answer
Oh,
this.
we had to answer those things, and they were asked with a stone face. But I just don't have any record of it, but I'm having some, it's coming back to me. And I don't even know in what building I went to register to vote. But it was really a difficult thing to deal with, because I'm one of those that I hate for anybody to call me boy. I hate for anybody to call me boy. And I had, with the past chief of police in a meeting, I had to stop the meeting and tell everybody in the meeting, I'm old enough to know when it hurts. So nobody tells me when and how to say ouch. Because they wanted to tell me that you should put that behind you. You don't think about that, and whichever case may be, I had to break that up. Don't tell me how and when to say ouch. And we got a whole lot of things. And you should see my story on the bag that exists within my life. I don't carry the bag, but the bag follows me. And
What do you mean?
we have a difficult thing.
Well, what is that story? Have you written a story?
I'm working on it.
Oh, you're working on it.
I'm working on it. Even photographing. I have the bag and a picture of me at different places with the bag that just follows me.
And those were experiences that you've had.
Yes.
Tell me, you know, you were talking about the voting and going there. And there were you, a college graduate.
Oh yes.
You were a college graduate coming and to register to vote.
But I was a black boy.
Yeah. Now, did they call you boy at that time?
No, they didn't call me boy.
Oh.
They treated me as if I
As a boy.
was a boy.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. I understand
That
exactly.
is what I wanted to,
Mhm.
you know, bring out.
Oh girl, you should see. And some of the things that I've had recently, I worked with the Legal Redress Committee of the NAACP.
Mm-hmm.
I've had ladies to come to me who had been tased, black ladies.
Mm-hmm.
One I had I took a picture of Tay's marks back of her neck, so she must not have been aggressive. And I stopped sometime when I see the police with black women to stop. And I stopped one time, and I was not a threatening distance, but I was observing what was going on. During that time, one of the young policemen yelled to me, "You got to move. And if you're not out of my sight in 2 minutes, I'm going to arrest you." You don't know what that did. That pulled out something from my bag from the 40s when I got out of the Marine Corps. But I knew I had had 2 heart attacks. If I'd said too much, he might have tased me and I might not be able to come out of it. So I got in my car and I drove by him going, I said, "I'm going downtown now to see the chief of police." But you don't know how that hit me, dealing with my bag. Because the thing that it reminded me of, I thought I had forgotten it. It was one of those things the chief of police said, "Oh, that's in the past. I thought I had forgotten it," but it rung that bell. And believe it or not, you just can't imagine the feeling I got when I could not stand up to him because he had that authority. And there's so many different things. And
So you were in the Marine Corps?
yes.
And when did you get out of the Marine Corps?
Well, I got out of the Marine Corps in 47.
In 47. And you came, when did you come to
Well,
Lynchburg?
I came to Lynchburg in 52.
52.
And the story of blacks in the Marines is another story. Of course, I was in what they call the experimental group. They didn't think we were intelligent enough to serve in the Marines. And you haven't looked at, check your computer and check the Montfort Point's story. Montfort Point story of the U.S. Marines. And that was Montfort Point Camp, the black camp in Jacksonville, North Carolina, which was part of Camp Lejeune.
So it was segregated there?
Completely segregated. The only officers were Caucasian. And while I was in, one young man went through officer school and was commissioned. And I say it this way, and I don't have any documentation on it. He was commissioned on Tuesday. On Thursday, he was discharged. I said, I have no documentation on that.
Oh.
But I never saw him.
Again after that?
That's right. Oh, and the stories of the Montfort Marine, you'd find something quite interesting there.
Have you added any stories to it?
No, I've added no stories to it. But I pull it up every now and then. And a lot of it that used to be on there has disappeared from the internet. Have you heard of Montfort Point Camp Lejeune?
No.
There's a lot of people, black and white, don't know that there were black Marines during the Second World War.
I didn't know that. I knew Haywood Robinson was a Marine, but I think it was after, because he was younger.
Well after.
Yeah.
Well after. And I got in on the tail end. I never saw combat. I did get to go to Guam, but I was on a mission with somebody. But the story is beautiful. Just look on your computer and look for Montfort Point, Camp Lejeune, and you'll read that and you'll enjoy yourself.
I don't know whether I will or not. Oh.
See, we had one young man that I wrote a story about, Ambrose Smith, who did 2 tours of duty in the U.S. Marines, and that was unusual. And it's quite an interesting story.
Well, what's the recruiting thing? We need one good man or something? What the Marines are always looking for the best. I've forgotten now what it says. Well, their recruiting poster says.
All we say is, once a Marine, always.
It's a Marine. That's what.
Montfort, M-O-N-F-O-R-D. Montfort Point, P-O-R-I-N-T. Camp Lejeune. We don't have to worry about the Camp Lejeune because it'll come up.
So when you came out of the Marines, then what made you decide to come to Lynchburg? Are you not from Lynchburg originally?
No, I'm a former from Norfolk.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Monroe, I don't know how he got my name, but he called me while I was at home in Norfolk working and offered me an interview.
He was a school administrator.
He was the superintendent of schools here. And he offered me an interview, and I came here. He had learned from somebody that I had graduated from Shaw University, and I had been a member of the football team, and he needed a chemistry teacher, and he needed a football coach. So I came here, and I assisted Howard Waters as football coach, and I took over the chemistry department.
Now, Howard Waters, didn't he get in the Lynchburg Hall of Fame or something like that? Wasn't he?
I think, yes, he was. He was. He was put into
I never
the
knew
Lynchburg
him,
Hall of
but,
Fame. Yeah. He and I worked together.
Didn't Dunbar have a pretty good football team?
A very good football team.
Excellent football
Very good
team.
football team.
Now, I don't know much about sports, but didn't you win some state championships
Oh,
or
yes.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been very modest.
I have one of the trophies at home from that. But we did very well in athletics.
Mm-hmm.
And Waters was a good football player himself. And track, he carried some of our boys to pin relays, and they did some beautiful records and won some pretty good awards even in track at pin relays. And
I remember the Dunbar marching band.
the Dunbar marching band was something else.
Just talk.
You went to Dunbar too.
Yeah, oh yeah.
See, she was a student for that.
She was one of your students?
No, she didn't come through my class. If she had, it would have been wonderful. We'd be still fighting. But I had some beautiful times there.
And you taught chemistry?
Yes.
And
Now this is where I get into a little trouble, because people ask me, what did you teach? And I don't tell them chemistry. I tell them I taught pupils, and chemistry was my tool.
I know you taught my son
And that
later
I
on.
believe in, yes.
In Dunbar, you taught pupils.
I enjoyed that thing. And the beautiful part about it, I guess, see, I was never an A student. And I didn't care really if they learned chemistry so much, but it shaped them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I dealt with so much. And I really enjoyed. I enjoy my pupils now. My friends are my pupils. And even some who didn't go in my class, they're pupils. She and my wife joke, I'm her boyfriend, she's my girlfriend. But we do an awful lot together. We have a lot of fun. And I'm crazy about it. It just kills me that not many of the teachers are left.
Mm-hmm.
And they're gone.
Actually, it's only 6 that taught me at the school when I was going there. Now, of course, you know, it's done by teachers left from later years for those younger ones, but it's only 6 left from like in 1954 when I graduated.
Until I came in 52.
Now, Dunbar had a wonderful reputation because it was not only a school, but it was like the social center and cultural center.
Cultural center of the city for blacks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the problems we're having now. We have no center.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell that we don't have a center. Everything revolved around that.
Mm-hmm.
Now we really don't even have what we might call a leadership. You see, it was strange. I remember going to the bank to borrow some money. My father was in the hospital, and we were short at home. The blacks were short everywhere. And the banker asked me, he says, can you get CWC to sign this loan for you? I looked at him. I said, of course not. I work there. I'm drawing a salary. I don't need him to sign. He doesn't need to be responsible for this. I'm responsible for myself. It was just indignant. It just didn't, it just tore me up. And that's the type of leadership we had around here.
Mm-hmm.
They depended on certain blacks to handle and take care of the rest of the blacks. And I went home, went to the bank, in fact it was Bank of Virginia, and applied for the loan. Oh, you were Clark's son? Yes, come on in here. I got the loan with no questions asked. Nobody had to sign. But you know, it's so much different. And I went through a lot of it, a whole lot of it. I got that money, went to the hospital to get my father out of the hospital. And they said, well, you don't have it all, and he can't go out to the hospital now. I said, yes, he can. My father's down in the room now, putting his clothes on, and his wife is with him. You will take this, or else. I'm taking him home. The longer he stays, the greater the bill. I'm taking him home. Now you take this, and I will sign the paper to give you the rest later. They looked at me like I was a fool. So I guess I was.
But they had to accept
Oh,
that.
they had to accept that. Of course, now they could have called the police. But what would the police have done? Would they kept my daddy in the hospital?
They paid for him to.
Yeah, they could have put me in jail. But they kept him in the hospital and the bill run up and he can't pay it and I'm in jail and can't help him pay it. So it was a whole lot of things, a little lot of things came up.
But were you involved when the desegregation of the school was done?
Oh yes.
I know my children were through in school that time, and it was a pretty tense time in the city.
Oh, it was.
They had to do it under court order.
Oh yes, straight out of my class, Linda Woodruff and Owen Cardwell, they were in my science class that year, and they went, and it was so much of it. The Boxdale girl, Linda, she's a Linda Woodruff, and there were a whole lot of things that had to happen during that time. And though I was at Dunbar when they entered the school, I heard something about it. I even, at one time, had a lot of newspaper clippings relating to what went on. And it was an interesting and a tense time.
Well, there's quite a bit of preparation had to go on. I think Virgil Wood was very instrumental, and I think some others in teaching the young people how to go about that. And then the parents of the children had to be prepared. Well, they brought suit, I think, against the city.
See, I was a member of Virgil Wood's church at that time.
So, I don't know whether you want to elaborate on some of that, what went on in preparing the ground for it, and maybe some of the backlash?
Well, there were some tutoring sessions that were carried on, and some behavior modification programs that she was involved in, and most of them were involved in, because a lot of students met at different homes in order to prepare themselves. Now, I remember 3 students that were in that, four students, Linda Woodruff, Owen Cardwell, Crack Harris's daughter, I can't even think, Christabel, and Dr. Jackson's daughter. Yeah, I remember those 4, but by name I can't remember exactly.
They're on the painting. I've forgotten what I was going to say. Didn't need to interrupt. And then I
No, you
couldn't remember what I was going to say.
This conversation is going beautifully, folks, but I already give you half an hour. So
oh no, you got to have an hour, let's go. Well, maybe we can get together and just talk sometime.
Yeah.